Hi, this is Sean, and as part of my video tribute series to my teacher and friend, dear Dr. Barry Harris, this is going to be an overview of the main concepts that I learned from him. Now, I'm very aware that I can't do his teaching, his playing, and the system justice in this much time, but perhaps what I can do is give an overview to people who are just getting into it or would like to understand better than they already do, and about the main concepts that can change in your playing when you study this kind of material. We'll do some stuff on chords and we'll do some stuff on improv as well. I do have other videos on YouTube that go into these things in more depth, so keep that in mind as well. There's only so much I can teach in this much time. It's a big subject. But chords. First of all, music being movement. So Barry would often say music is movement. And what he meant was that a lot of people learn big old chords, but the same chords can be smaller and have movement. That kind of thing. Let's do it like that. So there's movement within the chords. In fact, I heard somebody say recently at the funeral service that it was like there were chords within melodies and melodies within chords. That's the beauty of that type of playing. Barry often said that the end to this music is not vertical. In other words, a vertical chord structure on a page, like, say, the end to this music is knowing what to do with it horizontally. It's to have some sort of movement within the music. This can be achieved by learning the major 6 diminished scale, which is the C major scale or any major scale with an added flat 6. Don't remove the normal 6. And when you do that, you can play alternate notes and get a C6. Then from the second degree, you can play alternate notes and get a D diminished. I have a whole lesson on this, so I will link that somewhere here. And when you keep going up, you get C6s or D diminished inversions all the way up. And that gives movement itself. So for example, if you had a line like, it could be like this. In its most basic form, you might go in the other direction in the left hand, down the scale. Certainly here, something like that. Maybe you just move a couple of notes at the top. Something like that. You see, these were the notes that moved. So it's this type of movement that can give you a totally different, fuller dimension to sitting there with a chord in the left hand and saying something like that, right? And also the idea of knowing that a major 6 is also a minor 7th. C6 is also a minor 7th. It's a minor 7th. So that similar movement could be a minor 7, and then we could go to some sort of D7. That kind of thing. Okay, that's what it means when we say music is movement. Now, knowing that major 6s correspond to minor 7ths is one thing, that minor 6s, C minor 6 corresponds to A minor 7 flat 5 is another relationship. Go and look at my video where I go over those things, and there's a lot more detail in that. Also, the importance in general of major 6 chords and minor 6 chords, which in a lot of lead sheet books seem to be very overlooked. It's quite strange. Some books even get it wrong, and they'll put a major 6 where it really doesn't belong. So I have a video on this as well, by the way, when to use major 6 chords. I'll link that. I think I should link these things below, actually. I'll link that too. But where we have the root in the melody, for example, we tend to use a major 6 chord, not a major 7th against the root. That is misunderstood in several books. So you'll see a book, say, having some, and this isn't only from the Barry Harris system, to be fair, you know, I learned that beforehand, but the importance of major 6 chords and moving them around is something that I learned from Barry. But I've seen a lead sheet for Somewhere Over the Rainbow that starts with a C, but they've got a C major 7 there, which is not right. Here's movement. That kind of thing. Also minor 6 chords, because minor 6 chords seem to be quite overlooked in a lot of lead sheet books as well. I'm trying not to mention any of the common ones. But for example, when we're in the key of a minor, it should really be C minor 6, especially if you're playing music from the standards era. I know that a lot of these rules got broken later on before people start complaining. I realize that. So it may depend how you want to sound. For me, the authentic sound of jazz is that standards era and bebop era, which I love so much. And that's the era I'm describing, the era of standards. So Summertime would have not been a minor 7th chord just because it's C minor. It would have been minor 6. It's much more minory, right? So knowing when to do that. On a 4 minor 6, for example, even when you're in a major key, when you're in the key of C, the 4th chord, 1, 2, 3, 4, with a minor 6 on it, leads home. It's this sound. Okay, but a lot of books will write minor 7 there. And there is a place for that in some of the substitutions. But having the original sound of minor 6 is a very pretty thing as well, especially if you learn Barry's movement scale, F minor 6, alternating with a G diminished. Another F minor 6, inverted, G diminished, inverted. Again, I teach this stuff in more depth in other videos. And then if you want to sit on a minor 6 for a while, you have something to do. And that, for me, I think that's one of the reasons that people substitute some beautiful stuff like minor 6, because they don't know what else to do with it. So let's say that you have a C going to an F minor 6 and back. This can often happen at the end of an A section of a tune when there's time to kill. But with the movement scale, C6 moves through C major 6 with its diminished that we talked about. F minor 6 moves through its F minor 6 diminished scale that we spoke about. Now you start to get movement. Again, this is a quick overview just to give concepts, okay? We're not trying to get in deep into what to play, so please don't start posting in the comments. You didn't teach it right and I couldn't understand it. You can pause it, you can slow it down on YouTube, but this is an overview, okay? A few little things about improvisation as an overview as well. One of the things I learned so much from in Barry's classes was the idea of putting scales over tunes, but in time. So I had learned scales before, I had applied them to tunes, not in exactly the same way for sure, but actually putting them over tunes in time. For example, on an F blues, F7 to B flat 7, he would have the class going root to 7th, and if the scale was staying for 2 bars, then root to 7th and back. So this is the F7 scale. F major with a flat 7, B flat 7 scale, B flat major with a flat 7 if you like, and then up and down. Stuff like that, because when you take whole tunes like that, then suddenly you start to sound right and it stops becoming an issue of which notes are available to you. Your hands just go to them. And then you learn those from different points. So for example, from the 3rd, always one short of an octave. If we started on the root, we went to the 7th. If we're starting on the 3rd, we'll go up to the 2. Three to 2 and back this time. And that F7, and that's another thing. 2-5 means 5. Barry would say that all the time. 2-5 means 5, meaning we have a C minor 7 to F7, potentially in the blues, which is a 2-5 progression. And when you have that, you take the 5 scale. So if you have C minor 7 to F7, you just improvise on F7. Cuts out the thinking immediately, because when you buy books on jazz, as many of you will have done, I have done too, you will find so many different scales. And every time a chord changes in some of these theories, you've got to change your scale. It wasn't like that studying with Barry. It was more about the function and taking one scale over a function, which could involve several chords. So if you only have to think about the F7 scale, then you got a lot less to think about, right? Another concept was then phrase building in time. So we would do things in class like looking for the nearest note of a B flat 7 scale when the chord changes. Would often put in, well, that is in the scale anyway, and if it wasn't, we'd put in that extra note. So let's say if that became a pattern, then we would put it in the blues on time, be quiet on the rest, and have 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Something like that. But not just learning licks either. Another very interesting concept for me was favouring phrase building through a scale rather than fixed licks that only serve one purpose. For example, if we're on the F blues, let's say we like a simple little thing, or don't like it, or we're just trying to explore. The beauty comes out of the exploration. Sooner or later with a phrase, you're going to get something beautiful. So here's an F7, the F7 scale. We're going to take, this is the F7 chord with the last 2 notes reversed. If we took it through the scale, it would be like this. Now I'll put a half step below each one. Quite like that now. You know, things start to flow a bit more. Or let's say if I take the one from here. Instead of adding a note at the beginning, cutting a note. And then find your way to the B flat 7, stuff like that, you know. So phrase building over licks just gives you more, because all you have in a real situation is taking something and figuring it out and turning it into something else and going in these directions that you end up in. And if that's what you're practicing, rather than do I remember this lick and can I play it, there may be a small amount of that in jazz as well, but it's not the total. It's not the sum total of what we're practicing as improvisers. Also, scale rules. So let's take the dominant as an example. If we take the C7 scale, actually because we were working on F7, why don't we take the F7 scale? If we're descending from the root, we add this extra note, E being the extra between the root and 7th. And in doing that, the F7 notes come onto the beat. This isn't the way he taught it, to be fair, but that is something that, you know, I found with it. And it just gets you to sound right, you know. So if you're not coming out right in a line, then that's the thing that's going to fix it. And you only add those when you're descending from a 1, 3, 5 or 7, a chord note. So you don't need it from the second. No E. From the third you will need it, because you end. You see, what happens is the F7 notes get back on the beat. From the 4 you won't need it. So once you have rules like that, it gives you a confidence in your playing. And it's not that you need to be correct all the time in terms of chord notes on the beat or anything like that. But when you're making connections between chords, or when you're trying to come out on a phrase, you can create tension and it can then release later on when you have things under your fingers that get you out right, if you see what I mean. So this was by no means the be all and end all of this system. It's, there's a lot to it, and there was a lot to Barry's teaching and of course playing. But this was just to give a little introduction to people who are wondering what the core concepts are. Hope it was helpful for you, and look forward to seeing you on the next one. Hey, thanks for watching this lesson, and if you enjoyed it, maybe you'll consider becoming a Jazz Skills member where I can show you a lot more. I've got hundreds of lessons for every level of jazz piano player, whether you've currently got no jazz, or a few tunes but no real freedom, or an advanced player. Hope to see you soon. Bye for now.